Hey, my lovelies, we're back in the snowy forest again for another book review. I know last time we were here, there was some creature making some terrifying noise, but I spoke to the local park ranger, and he told me that there is absolutely nothing to fear in these woods. So now that I know that this place is absolutely safe, let's get into today's book review. So today, my lovelies, I am reviewing... No, I'm out. Yes, my lovelies. This seems like a much better spot for the book review, but before I tell you about today's book, I'm going to have a little drink really quick. So, to calm my poor nerves, because that, I don't know what that was. I know the park ranger said everything was safe, forest ranger, but as I was saying, it was scary. I mean, what was that? I don't know. I just need a little something to calm my nerves before we get into today's book review. But first, a toast to you, my lovelies. May good fortune always come your way. Delightful. And if you're curious about this wine, it is Pacific Fruit Vineyard Sweet Blueberry. I had a little taste of it while I was reading today's book, and it is just simply divine. And you can find this wine at Aldi's if you're interested in giving it a little taste. Okay. So, my lovelies, let's get into the book review. Today, I am reviewing Crown Prince by Bill Kilpack III. Now, before we do the usual dive into about who the author is and what this story is about, I'm going to do something a little different, my lovelies. I'm going to give the butterfly score first. Why? Well, I was snooping around, and other reviewers have discovered that people like it better if you give them the score before telling them the meat and potatoes. So if that's something you enjoy, my lovelies, make sure to comment below and let me know if you want me to keep giving you the butterfly score first or save it till the end. Anyway, Bill, you're lucky. You get to be the first author on this channel to get their score first. So let's get to it. Today's book, The Crown Prince by Bill Kilpack, gets a resounding 5 butterflies out of 5. And trust me, this author earned those butterflies. Before I get into why, let me tell you about this fantastic artist of the pen. Bill published for the first time when he was 9 years old. Later, at the age of 15, he got a paid on-staff position writing for a local sports publication. Sometime later, he started freelancing as a writer. As of the making of this video, he's published 4 books. 3 of his stories are part of his New Blood saga, which includes Crown Prince. The 4th book is a sci-fi novella called Paleface. For as long as he can remember, Bill has been writing and telling stories. As a kid, he would draw pictures of spaceships, act out the battles, drawing in laser blasts and explosions after erasing parts of the ships that were blown away by enemies. Originally, his love of telling stories, especially about superheroes, made him want to be a cartoonist with his own line of comic books. This dream changed when Bill was 12. In the 6th grade, his teacher, Miss Farron, who taught his language arts and gifted and talented classes, let him write new chapters of a novel for every writing assignment in those two class lists, regardless of the actual assignment. By allowing him to have so much extra writing time, Bill was able to complete his first book by the end of the year. Upon completion of his first novel, Bill knew he no longer wished to be a comic book writer and changed his career plans to becoming a novelist. After he made this decision, he started making sure to always have a pencil and paper with him, so that he could jot down a few notes every time his muse wanted to let him in on a few good story ideas. After publishing a couple of novels, Bill is amazed by the number of people that he grew up with who mention his red three-ring binder he carried around with him, loaded with lined paper so he could write down his thoughts as they came to him. Crown Prince was such a delight to read, making me curious where this author found the inspiration to create such a fantastic piece of literary art. Crown Prince is the first installment of this author's New Blood saga, which was inspired by a reoccurring dream that he experienced over several months. The dream would often have him wake up in tears, causing him to soon realize that that dream needed to be turned into a book. When he started writing, he realized there was no way he would be able to achieve the emotional impact he wanted to convey to his audience in just one book. So he decided to just turn it into a trilogy. However, when building to the point of the story that occurred in his dream that would really punch up the saga, he noticed he had no way to really put that part of the dream into the stories with just 3 books alone. So he thought it would be better to turn the series into 6 books. As he continued writing, it turned into an 8-book saga. Now, I have to give credit where credit is due. Unlike myself and many other authors who I've spoken to, Bill was not scared of publishing his book. He figures that he was never really afraid to publish because becoming a novelist was a lifetime dream. So publishing his books makes him feel like he's finally getting to travel down the path of his dreams, and this is just the beginning. Bill loves books for the sake of loving books. Growing up, money was tight, so he didn't have as many toys as his friends, which caused him to be envious about whatever new thingamabob they got that he couldn't have, and at the time didn't realize that kid was just gonna forget about it in a few months. But it at least did not take him too long to learn that books were different. There was never a time in his life that he can remember when he asked his parents for a book and the answer was a resounding no. Books were always a treat. He always valued having them, reading them, and taking care of them. Books produced a deep love of reading within him, particularly books on mythology, science fiction, and fantasy. He has a wall in his office covered in bookshelves and more bookshelves throughout the house. He knows some people love ebooks, but for him, they don't come close to matching the fantastic feeling a physical book can give you. He still fans the pages of a new book he buys to smell that sweet paper ink. And my lovelies, that truly is a wonderful smell. It gets you excited for the amazing journey that book is about to take you on. You know, my lovelies, I never expected to run from the woods, to escape to the woods. things are just unexpected sometimes. Kind of like how the main character in this story didn't expect to end up in a forest at all. Natharr is guardian of Maarihk, one of a long line of protectors dating back to the firstborn age before the conquest. Natharr's duty is an ancient role rooted in his firstborn blood, giving him sight to see what is yet to be, adhering to his sacred duties even in the centuries since the firstborn were forced to the brink of extinction by the Natharr still stands guard over all men, or firstborn, seeing what will come to pass, determining what can be avoided and what cannot, spending decades planning even for saving the life of the newborn crown prince, so he may one day reclaim the throne. Now that we've been sitting here a bit, I am feeling a tad bit better after that whole fiasco. Although I do wish, like the main character in this book, I had the foresight to see that that other spot just was never going to work. Although being able to see the future doesn't really help you prepare for everything. So the story starts off with the standard trope of a king and a queen having a brand new healthy baby boy who will be heir to the throne. But somebody who's been trying to take over the kingdom and become the next king is knocking at the door with a huge army, and, well, there's a pretty good chance he's going to get the kingdom, so they have to naturally get the child out of the palace, hide him, and wait till he's an adult so that he can one day reclaim his kingdom. Alright, normally with these stories, we don't see this kid growing up except for maybe half a second. Then the kid's an adult and gathering his band of friends or whatever and goes to reclaim his kingdom. We never really see the part of him growing up or really get a chance to get all that attached to whoever raised him. This trope is something I have seen so many times. It's not a bad trope, it's not. As long as the writer is willing to keep it fresh. And this author took that trope, shook it up, and turned it into something amazing. Because instead of saving the heir, then skipping to when he's an adult or, angsty teenage person, whining and crying about the way to the throne and blah, 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 we get to follow the heir while he's still a baby. And the story is actually told more through the eyes of his guardian, Natharr, who has the sacred duty of protecting the kingdom. Natharr is the dominant main character in this story, so I'm going to get deeper into him in just a moment, but I do want to take a second to talk a little bit about his relationship with the Crown Prince. Usually with stories where the heir has to be saved so he can come back and retake his kingdom, they don't dive deep into the relationship between the heir and their guardian, because most of the time you might get a glimpse of it if they show a few moments where the heir is a kid, or you just assume that they have this deep bond with their guardian via the fact that it's inferred in the story that that's just the way it is. I really like the fact that this author decided, one, not to fast forward the heir into adulthood. Instead, you get to see the heir while he's still a baby, and you do get to see him grow up. Although he does remain a child throughout the book, you get to still see him grow up, and you get to see him develop that close bond a son would develop with his father. in the story, and that's something I love that the authors put in, because not only is it a really beautiful thing seeing this kid look at Natharr as his father and just, worship the ground he walks on, but it's also so sweet to see how that relationship develops, because normally this is something just glazed over in this type of story. The fact that it's a key element in the story and you get to see that relationship develop and how strong their bond is, it's just, I feel really beautiful, and I'm so grateful that the author put it in his book. We've established Natharr can see into the future. It doesn't prepare him for everything, so he does try to prepare for what his sight does not tell him, especially when it came to his inevitable escape with the young crown prince. Sadly, despite all of his preparation, he was just woefully unprepared for his biggest challenge. It wasn't avoiding the enemy. That was a huge challenge, but not his biggest problem. It wasn't trying to figure out how not to be seen. It wasn't many of the factors you're thinking of right now. It was just the hardest challenge that many men are inevitably forced to face. What do you do when you have a huge crush on a woman? I want to take this moment to get a little deeper into Natharr as a character. Natharr has a future-seeing ability known as the sight, and he is able to get glimpses into critical moments that will happen. Because of this ability, he is the guardian, and it's his responsibility to maintain peace in the kingdom. His ability did show him that he would one day have to escape with the crown prince to a place where the baby would be safe and wait for the child to come of age to reclaim his throne. So he knew that was going to happen, and he planned for it. But he did not see himself taking a huge role in the child's development growing up. He only saw glimpses of him visiting with the kid for a little bit, so he saw his role more of, that advisor in a kid's life that shows up every now and again, kind of a role model, but not the dominant force in raising the kid. So he expected to just get the kid somewhere safe, get him set up, and, just leave to continue his duties as guardian, especially since as the guardian, he's actually not supposed to allow himself to get tied down to a single place for a super duper long time. As you probably guessed, this story takes place during a medieval time period. Natharr has a bit of an issue. He has to take a newborn baby to safety. Newborns have a habit of getting hungry a lot, and they don't have any teeth. Natharr does not have the necessary equipment to feed the child, so he has to take the baby's wet nurse with him. The baby's wet nurse, Darshil, does present a lot of problems for Natharr. She's not driving him crazy in the sense that she's being some uppity Nimrod, causing problem after problem and complaining all the time. The problem is that Natharr is both physically and mentally attracted to her. As the guardian, he's not supposed to be entertaining this idea of having a wife and a family. His only wife is supposed to be the kingdom, and the kingdom is always supposed to come first. He's not supposed to neglect it. But at the same time, he does have growing feelings for Darshil. Darshil is not making his conundrum any easier, because she is very attracted to him as well, and really wants him to stay with her when they get settled and raise the child together. She does frequently peer pressure him to be this child's father, which makes Natharr feel some kind of way, because he does like entertaining the idea of doing that. But at the same time, it really does conflict with his duty as the guardian. Something else I really enjoyed in this story is how well the characters of Darshell and Natharr played off each other. Often the two of them have very deep conversations, and many of their conversations involve a bit of a culture clash where they may not agree with each other's perspective, but at the same time they're willing to try to understand the other person a bit better. For example, Darshell is from another country. She arrived in Maarihk via the fact that her father is an ambassador. When she was a child, her father came to the palace. The king was the host. The king was a very good host, and in her culture, the highest gift that you can give is a female that is close to you. And because her father loved her so much, he decided to give her to the king. The king rejected this gift at first, but the ambassador was insistent because that was supposed to be such a high-ranking gift, like the gift. So the king ended up having to give in because he didn't want to insult the ambassador. So he took Darshell and threw her in the kitchens to work and basically forgot about her. And she was stuck working in the kitchen. She's a kid in an entirely new place, to a culture she doesn't belong to, stuck with people she doesn't know and don't seem to like her all that much. Natharr is naturally upset by this, and he complains about how could her father just abandon her like that, just give her away. Darshell insists but that is the highest gift that can be given. It's such an honor. Natharr does not see it as an honor. He sees it as disgusting, and I did find it disgusting myself, but Darshell does raise an interesting argument because as they go back and forth about it, Natharr brings up how Darshell is the daughter of an ambassador. She should have been married into a family of high status instead of abandoned to be alone in some kitchen to work. And she says, if I was married to a high-ranking family, I would still be unhappy. And we have no insurance. I wouldn't have been married off to a drunk. I would have just been married to a high-ranking family. Because as a female, I have no way to say no to who I'm married off to or no to wherever I'm sent. The men call all the shots over my future. So how can I ensure my own happiness if somebody else has full autonomy over me, whether it be the kitchen or a rich household? She basically pointed out that she has absolutely no say in it. And I'm glad she brought this up because during many of the culture clash moments, you have to recognize that every time she brings up things that Natharr has a problem with, she also has to point out as a woman, she has no say. How can she even go against the system if the system is designed by somebody who is determined to control her? And she has no real full power to seek out her own happiness via the fact that she lives in a world where she's basically told what to do. The last thing I would like to say about Natharr and Darshell's relationship is how well Darshell is able to improve Natharr as a character to a degree because she gets him to realize that he does put too much pressure on himself. Well, she gets him to realize to a certain extent that he needs to stop pressuring himself too much, even though he has a very bad habit of doing that and he doesn't fully get over that. In the story, Darshell tells Natharr about an incident where somebody broke into the kitchen and was sneaking around and was going to hurt everybody, and everybody in the kitchen was scared. Darshell stood up and handled the intruder herself because she did not want to get hurt, nor did she want anybody else to get hurt. When the knights arrived, it was 2 nights, they came in, and instead of telling Darshell, oh my goodness, I'm so glad you were able to handle this intruder, we're so sorry that this happened, we're gonna make sure to check to see why there wasn't anybody here to make sure to protect you guys because that was dangerous, they basically cussed her out for standing up for herself and defending everybody and herself. And when she gets irritated with them for doing that, they think it's okay to beat her. Natharr gets upset about this especially since he was the one, alongside one of his comrades, who trained those knights, and he trained them with the intent for them to be honorable men, to do the right thing, and to know that knights he trained to be honorable did something that disgusting. He felt like a complete failure. Meanwhile, Darshell basically points out to him, hey, you're just one person, and as the guardian, your job takes you to all these places. You can't sit here and babysit these knights and monitor them and try to make them better people when you have a responsibility to the kingdom and often have to leave because of that. You shouldn't blame yourself for things that were outside of your control because you had to do your job. I like the fact that the author put that in more than once, because I feel like Natharr is so absorbed in trying to be this perfect guardian and really put the burden of everything has to be put on him. And Darshell brings up, hey, you're still a person. There is only so much you can do. You know, my lovelies, one of the absolute best things about being a fantasy writer is that you get to build these amazing worlds for people to enjoy. And they're always just so new and interesting, just something really different. And this author did a really, really good job with creating something really new and exciting with his world building. The last thing I wish to mention is how much I love this author's world building, especially when the characters reach the magic forest, because Natharr realized that is the safest place for them to settle in and hide the prince. The forest was such an entertaining part of the story, since when they reach the forest, you encounter all these interesting creatures that live in the forest. One interesting story from when they were in the forest is when Natharr is building them a place to live, and he needs tools, so he has to go to a local village. He's riding along and his horse flips him and throws him off, and he gets blacked out. And he wakes up in a cat people village. He learns that the cat people unintentionally ambushed him because they were after his horse, even though they don't tell him they were trying to get the horse. They hint well enough that he figured out they knocked him off his horse via the fact they wanted to eat the horse. So they're sorry that they did it. They want to make up for it, but Natharr is in a hurry. He was knocked out. He doesn't know how long he was knocked out for, and he didn't want to leave Darshell alone overnight because she is freaked out being in this weird forest full of magic creatures and all kinds of magical stuff that she doesn't understand. He wants to get back, but he's injured, and the cat people want to, take care of him. And it gets really awkward fairly quickly because he doesn't want to insult the cat people, obviously. He doesn't want to be on bad terms with them, and they're trying to, heal him and stuff. But at the same time, he really needs to go, and it was just such a funny scene. And it was even interesting how the author showed the cat people's society and how it was different. But that was just really fun, and the cat people are just one of the really fun and interesting creatures that are in this story. And that, my lovelies, is my review of Crown Prince by Bill Killpack. And if you don't grab yourself a copy of this book, my lovelies, then you're doing yourself just this huge disservice. It is just such a wonderful story and a really fun read. So you're definitely going to want to grab yourself a copy. Now, if you've made it to this part of the video, thank you just so much. And please give this video a like. Leave me a little comment. And if you have not yet, slap the subscribe button like it owes you money. And don't forget to give that little notification bell a ring. And with that, my lovelies, this video is a wrap. Now, if you please, come with me as we dance into a world